Hey, how's it poppin'? Xenoblade X is a great game. Xenoblade X DE is an even better game, and it's a game I would like to talk about for a long time, so here we are. This video is going to be a little different than what I usually make. It's not going to be super well edited, and my writing style is going to be a bit less structured and a bit more informal, I guess. Basically, this is just going to be a yap session that I wrote a vague script for because I'm bad at improvising, and I don't want to take forever putting together a proper video. Should be fun though. I have so many thoughts about this game that are slowly eating away at my brain matter, and I just need to get them out there, so yeah. Anyway, the first part of this video will be mostly about gameplay, UI, visuals, stuff that doesn't require any spoilers. Later on there'll be like an actual spoiler warning for the base game story, then another for the new story content, and another after that for the series-wide spoilers, so feel free to dip out whenever's good for you. Okay, so like first thing that I probably don't even need to talk about, this game is gorgeous. The bump to 1080p makes what was already a beautiful game even prettier, and it's really nice to see that strength accentuated. And like, going beyond that, the updated UI is phenomenal. It's so clean and readable, and looking at all these updated menus for the first time was magical as someone who's very familiar with the original. Can't say enough good about it. Moreover, the updated character designs feel like a nice upgrade. They definitely took a bit of getting used to after spending so much time with the older models, but on the whole I think they're all pretty solid. Elma is very pretty. Some big additions to the game that I adore are the Mirren Archives and the Point Attack mode. The former is a compendium of lore and world building that is absolutely perfect for a game with as rich a world as X, and it's a great addition to refresh information that you might have missed. The latter is a training simulator that lets you beat up a funny bug to test your builds. This is something I've wanted to see in a Xenoblade game for years, and I'm so happy it's here and so fully featured. Hope these both become series staples and get even further expanded upon. I guess this brings us to other quality of life changes, which is easily the biggest area of improvement between this game and the original. Where to even start? Actually comprehensive tutorials and tips that you can check whenever, halving the material requirements for the more expensive endgame augments, being able to refund spent BP on arts and skills and dismantle augments for the materials, all of this makes the game so much nicer to play. The biggest of these is definitely being able to swap party members and change the time of day anywhere, but I love that you can still do these things the old way if you really want to. Very peak, 10 out of 10. There's more too. Quest and material tracking are both huge improvements, though not for the blood lobsters, I guess you still have to do that the old way. A lot of descriptions have been changed for the better. Claw Crusher's description actually makes sense now, amazing, and Ghostwalker tells you about the evasion during the art, which it didn't used to. There are so many options for sorting menus, which I love. Different icons for why you can't use an art, like being out of range, out of fuel, broken skull appendage, etc. It's all so good. Being able to mark items as favorites or as junk is great, and when an enemy resists a debuff, it shows you which debuff it was, which is so cool for readability. There's probably 20 other things I forgot to mention, but suffice to say that all of this stuff makes me very happy. I will say though, I wish there were options for sorting in the material market or upgrading battle trait menus. At the very least, tracked materials are easier to get to, but still, it would have been nice. Another change I would have loved is being able to save character loadouts like in Xenoblade 3. As that's a mechanic I loved that I hoped would become a series standard. I guess it's not impossible that it gets added in an update like it did in Xenoblade 3, but yeah. If nothing else though, being able to favorite items makes this much less of an issue than it would have been otherwise, and I'm glad that seems to be a standard for the series now. In terms of gameplay additions and improvements, there's a lot to gush about too. Quick cooldown for one is a mechanic that I initially thought might be pretty unbalanced. And it is, but it's fun, so who cares? I think on the whole it's a positive addition for making the game more fun to play, especially early on when your options are more limited. Survey rewards, that's another big one. Makes completing the Survey of Mirror all the more engaging and creates an iconic yummy feedback loop. Love it. Likewise, the removal of most field skills makes the game flow much better. The map is also a marked improvement, as you can access everything from the same screen without having to constantly switch between areas. All the different tabs and shortcuts make it very convenient to use. Okay, so also there are like idle animations in the menu that I think are super cute, and I'm pretty sure those weren't in the original. Please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong about this or anything else in this video, by the way. Anyway, they're cool and add a lot more character to screens that used to feel a bit more static. I also want to talk about Overdrive for a bit. Ever since I first played X, Overdrive has been my favorite combat mechanic in this entire series, and I really hope they do something with it again in the future. Anyway, in DE, Overdrive has been overhauled quite a bit. For one, it makes a sick as fuck noise when you activate it, which adds so much for me personally.
You ready?
It's also been made much more newcomer friendly. The default duration was extended, making it more useful earlier on, and upon first activation it performs an AoE attack that gives it utility, even if you don't quite know how to properly use it yet. These changes, plus the addition of a proper on-screen guide and quick cooldown, mean Overdrive is way more accessible, which I think is squarely a good change. Personally, I find these changes don't make a huge difference if you already know how to use Overdrive. It's just as broken as ever. I think this is a good thing though, since it's more approachable for beginners, and it's just as much fun as it used to be. Additionally, the damage total at the end of Overdrive now displays past the original cap of 100 million, now up to a billion, which you'll only ever see against Gradius or the global nemesis, but it's still cool. Let's see, what else? Reviving was buffed a little, still think it shouldn't cost so much TP, but oh well. Visible radial timers for combo reactions, plus new icons on the arts themselves. Stun uses Daze's icon, which I think is neat. All very cool changes. That being said, I do have a few problems I want to mention. A notable one is that at the end of battle, the area music restarts. This wasn't a thing in the original, so it's honestly kinda strange it exists here. It's not too bad early game when fights are longer, but later on when grinding enemies for materials, it can be a bit annoying. Not exactly the biggest deal in the world, but still. Another thing is that there's no display in battle for soul voice effects as there were in the original. Again, this isn't a huge deal, and the voice prompts themselves do sometimes tell you what the effect will be, topple soul voices for example, but it would have been nice to have for clarity. I also really wish there was an event theatre, especially because of how good a lot of the new cutscenes are. There's always the possibility that these issues get patched out later, but I wanted to mention them regardless. To get the rest of the negatives out of the way, I do want to say that as much as I love this game, there are some aspects I think haven't aged the best. Nothing like horribly offensive or anything, just some stuff I wish was changed more. The character creator is a good example of this. Options limited by a binary gender choice that also goes on to affect what outfits you can wear, and limited options for black hairstyles, problems that are seen fairly commonly in character creators. I understand why it's like this game is still essentially the same one that was released in 2015, and the scope of changes they could make had to be limited to some extent. I guess I just hoped for a bigger overhaul in this area specifically. Hopefully if Monolith Soft ever tries a character creator again, they can make one that's better from the ground up. Regardless, this game is still absolutely the definitive way to play, even with a few shortcomings. Before we move on to story discussion stuff, I also want to talk about the online briefly. DE is my first time getting to experience the online firsthand, and I've been enjoying it a lot so far. Even though the multiplayer aspect isn't super fleshed out, I think the stuff that is there is pretty neat at least, and global nemesis are a lot of fun. I also like being able to see everyone else's avatars, and all the cute references that you can put on your profile are very cool. Makes it feel a lot more like friendly and communal, I guess, and I love it. Okay, so next up is the part where I'm going to talk about everything up until the end of Chapter 12. This part will include spoilers for the original game's main story, plus the new characters added in DE, so if you don't want to hear any of that, you'll want to head out here. Thanks for watching so far. So I want to preface this by talking a bit about my perspective of the original game. I love X's story, I did from the moment I first finished it. I went into it not with low expectations per se, but I also knew not to hype it up too much, and yet I still found myself thoroughly engaged in it. I suppose this is probably because the thing I respond to most in stories is the characters, but I really thought X's story was beautiful. Unfinished for sure, but great nonetheless. I got really attached to Elma and Lao and Lin, and pretty much everything at the end of Chapter 11 and 12 was just perfect to me. I loved it so much. Lao's character arc is amazing, and it perfectly encapsulates so much of what the rest of the game's narrative threads lead to. The pain of loss and powerlessness. Being unable to protect and save the people close to you, and being forced to live on without them. It's not a coincidence that so much of Lao's character is wrapped up in this feeling that he's trapped. He's not allowed to move on and reunite with his family. Lin is a perfect parallel to Lao, and it's the reason they work so well together. Having lost her parents, Lin finds the resolve and strength to carry on regardless. And that sense of purpose and determination is ultimately what redeems Lao, what brings him back from the edge of total despair. She connects with him and comes to care about him, even after his betrayal, which incidentally gives us the rare good Tatsu moment where he shows that he does actually care about Lin. In return, Lao sees the spark in her, and it reminds him of his daughter, enough to the point that he returns to help everyone, realizing that humanity's future is worth fighting for in spite of everything. He also gets his "that leaves 9.98 billion reasons for me to want you" deadline, which is still the coolest shit in all of fiction, like it goes so hard. Elma is also great. She's characterized by an intense benevolence and aptitude, but is ultimately still helped along by her team. If it wasn't for Lin and Cross, she might have lost that kindness and humanity, and I just think that's very powerful. Really encompasses that need for cooperation and rejection of hierarchy that looms large across the game. Outside of the main story, I think X also just has a really strong cast, as shown throughout all their affinity missions. So much variety and flavor, all these characters feel unique and most of them have something to latch onto, whether it's a fun character quirk or some surprising depth that you only see after getting to know them. Not Bose though, I do not like him. Elevating that standard though are the new characters added in DE, who are all peak. Neonail is one of my new favourite characters. She's fun, she's interesting, she hates hierarchy, what's not to love? She just has a really good sense of doing her own thing and living her life how she sees fit, and it's awesome. Loved learning more about Oblivia's funny ring and the Clerians too. Very exciting. Also, her interactions with Celica are very cute, I care them.
Celica, are you alright? You're not hurt, are you? Oh, my poor sweet Celica.
Lady Neil, you jest.
Liesel too. She's awesome, and she's definitely gay with Alicia, right? Like, her last heart-to-heart even suggests that they live a domestic life together. Anyway, super fun character, and her second Affinity mission was one of my highlights of the whole game. Felt a lot like a Xenoblade 3 Ascension quest in the best way possible, and really adds a lot to the overall theme of being able to move on from the past and atone for your mistakes. Speaking of which, Breastfelg, so fucking cool. Sick design, the jet mode is the coolest thing in any video game, so fun. And you can go into cockpit view or do spinnies. Literally no notes, it's so good. I guess while I'm on the topic of the new characters, I am so glad about how much effort was put into them. They fit right in alongside the original game's cast. They all get multiple affinity missions, heart-to-hearts, and post-battle dialogue, some of which includes new interactions with other possible party members, which is great. They also all give you 2 new arts, which is not only cool for making the new characters have the same stuff as the old ones, but also because it adds new options for combat, which is so huge for a game like X. Not only is it just really nice to see, but it also proves to me how much love and passion went into this version of the game, and that's awesome. As if that wasn't enough, Kajag is a party member? Such a cool addition that doesn't even feel out of place, considering he essentially already had affinity missions in the original game. And his armor gives you Gabweed's armor for funny femmes like me. Huge win. While I'm on this point, the other new outfits are cool as fuck. All this, alongside the myriad of other new content, really makes DE feel like the game that Monolith Soft wanted to make initially, but couldn't because of time and money constraints. So vindicating to see, and I'm so happy this game exists. With that all out of the way though, I can finally talk about the new story stuff. If you haven't completed all of Chapter 13, you definitely shouldn't watch past this point. I'll give you a few seconds. Oh my fucking god, this part makes my brain go overdrive. What the fuck? Conduit jump scare, collective unconscious jump scare. I love all these characters, I love the squad, I love this fucking game. Ah! Okay, so like, I finished Chapter 13 about 4 days after the game came out, and I have not stopped thinking about it ever since. It's so good, y'all, holy shit. Now bear witness to the part of this video where I get extremely normal about the funny Xeno game. In case it isn't obvious, I absolutely adore the new story. It adds so much weight and context that only enhances the base game story further, and is also just a really beautiful culmination of X as a whole. It also made me post this on Blue Sky, so it's safe to say that, as with every time I experience a new Xeno story, my brain chemistry has been irrevocably altered. Where do I even begin? Well, I guess I'll just go through everything roughly in order. So starting off, it was immediately pretty surreal to even see more of these characters in this world, to see beyond that infamous cliffhanger. And as if that wasn't enough, shit goes down like immediately. The ghosts are exactly as cool and ominous as I was hoping they'd be, and as if they weren't already basically just Gnosis, the enemy index does confirm that when they disintegrate people, it is in fact salt that they are turning them into. This was a pretty common interpretation even before the game came out, but I'm so glad it's confirmed textually. Huge moment for Xenosaga and Bible fans alike. Gameplay-wise, I thought using the appendage targeting system to do the classic bit of invincible enemy that has a specific weakness was a neat idea, and fighting them off in New LA later was a cool parallel to the game's opening. Getting to hear more about Elma's history was so cool as well, and I adore the art style they used for a lot of these cutscenes. Such an awesome aesthetic that really adds some gravity to the lore dumps. Just the extra context of Elma's backstory lends so much weight to her actions in the base game. Her intense desire to protect humanity and anger at the Ganglion both stem from her planet and people suffering a similar fate as Earth. Elma was already one of my favourite characters, and this just adds so much more to her, it's great. Plus, knowing that Elma's planet was targeted by the Ganglion for the same reason as Earth has some very interesting implications that were already suggested by some side content in the base game. Many alien races appear to descend from or have strong ties to the Samarians. The return of the Vita was so exciting too, and when it siphons the Ares cores and you have to fight it, wild. The setup at the start of this chapter is awesome. It hints at the wide scope of topics that are about to be explored and expanded upon, and they did not disappoint with the payoff. We'll get to that later though when this video loses all sense of cohesion. Next up, Al. I fucking love Al. At first I was a little worried he was going to be a bit grating, but as I spent more time with him, he just grew on me so much. I cannot understate how powerful it is to me that, behind all the build-up and mystery and hero worship, he's just a goofy guy who has so much love in his heart for his friends and the world that it gives him power. It's adorable and heartwarming and I enjoy him. He reminds me a lot of characters like Bart from Xenogears and Adam from Torna, and I'm so glad this is an archetype they're still using because it slaps. He is rude to the pizza guy though, which is very fucked up. For being such a hyped up character, it's no surprise the two unique arts he provides are stupidly busted as well. The new music is great too, maintaining the high standard that X's soundtrack already had. Cutscene themes slap, and I didn't talk about this earlier, but Don't Worry's new remix literally made me cry the first time I heard it because I'm very normal. So on my initial playthrough, I made quite a lot of notes of things I wanted to talk about. During Al's explanation of the rift between worlds, I made a note that just reads, "What?" It's also the reason I posted this on Blue Sky. I love being a fan of this series. I'll probably go into more detail about this later when I talk full series spoilers, but yeah. Ares lore time. When they talked about how the Ares cores facilitated a jump between dimensions to get them to mirror, my immediate thought was, that's kind of like the power of the Zohar. By the way, I will be calling it the Zohar and Conduit interchangeably, don't worry about it. This will also be important later. Before I get too wrapped up talking about series-wide lore implications and the like, I love how much of the epilogue centers bringing everyone on Mirror together, carrying on what they can from this planet onto the next. Upon first impressions, I felt a bit iffy on the whole having to leave Mirror thing because I like Mirror. It's cool, and it felt like home for all the characters after the optimistic conclusion of the base game and all its side quests. I've definitely warmed up to this direction the story took now, however, due to the aforementioned focus on saving what they can of Mirror. I love those sections of helping to preserve some of Mirror's nature, and helping a reluctant Nopon to realize her own importance to others because they felt like they were adding to this idea. There's a vast difference between the start of X, where humanity is isolated and alone on this dangerous planet, and the end, where humanity lives in harmony with so many other Xeno races, and that's felt keenly here. Thanks to their communication and cooperation, they're all able to escape together, and that new world waiting for them will be brighter because of it. Again, very much heightens the themes and ideas of the base game. Lau and Al on the beach is like easily one of the best scenes in the series. It's so good. I already talked earlier about how much I love Lau, but seeing even more of him post-redemption made me so emotional. Seeing expansion on his and Lynn's relationship as well, her conflicted feelings about everything while still trying to keep Lau's spirit with her is great. And this ties pretty directly into Lynn's newfound perspective she talks to Al about later. This creates a beautiful through line that really adds a lot of depth to the base game's story, and for the ending to conclude with. Even in death, a person can live on through the ways they've affected others. Their spirit is an integral part of everyone whose lives they've impacted. This theme has a lot of parity with other recent Xeno games like Xenoblade 2 and 3 that explore the importance of life, death, memories, and spirits. I'm also obsessed with this space being some kind of afterlife/collective unconscious in between worlds. I will also come back to this later. Aside from just being a very clean way to resolve the original cliffhanger, it reminded me a lot of certain scenes in Xenosaga 1 and 3, and oh my god, it's so peak. Likewise, this idea awakens the possibility of a real and imaginary number domain existing, which isn't that surprising since the other Xenoblade games also make allusions to this, and X already takes a lot from Xenosaga. But it's cool to see implied even further in the text itself. It also means Lau does finally get to reunite with his family, which, I love it. Anyway, for Al's sin of being rude to a service worker, he gets sucked up by possibly the coolest looking thing I've seen in my life, Void's new form. Volataris as an area is less of a new continent to explore on the same level as Mirrors, but more reminiscent of a final dungeon, and I honestly think that's very cool. It's a well-designed area, and everything feels like it's reaching a climax. Plus, learning a lot of Void and Samarian lore from the Spheres was great, though I do find it pretty funny that every one of them follows with a cutscene of Void getting impaled. Also, extremely cool that every party member got one final bit of dialogue to round out the game and send off the cast. In case I haven't expressed this enough, they put so much love and effort into DE, and it shows in almost every aspect of the game. The music here is phenomenal too. Both the area theme and the battle theme are absolute bangers. I did get stuck for an extremely long time trying to find the third Trinity Golder though, and it messed up how well hidden it is for an area where the follow ball does not help. I would also like to say that I think these Golders have some interesting colours. A lot of the enemy and location names here seem to reference either something biblical or something astronomical, which is like pure Xeno through and through. Awesome. And then on to the final fight with Void. This shit goes so fucking hard. New Key We've Lost remix? Biff Legan doesn't override it? It's awesome. The part where Lau came back and everyone felt the spirits of their lost loved ones, oh my god, it makes me so emotional. Elma was so happy. And as if that wasn't peak enough, Al gets his awesome setup and payoff moment with your avatar. Some of my favourite moments in the original game were when Cross stepped up in a cutscene, like helping Lynn in chapter 11 and 12, and this finale gets to do that again in a way that is so heartwarming. And then your avatar gets to pilot the Ares, with Al and Lau backing you up. Banger boss fight. I also want to say, I love Void as an antagonist. Obviously not the deepest character by any means, but this ending and his background and lore do a lot for him. His existence adds a lot to the Ganglion and the Vita that makes everything before Chapter 13 a lot more impactful than it already was. He's a villain who is incredibly powerful and seemingly fueled by such an intense malevolence, but the root of all this was him attempting to play God and getting cosmically punished for it. As a result of his imprisonment, he's stagnant and immature. He has a rudimentary understanding of the world, and he wishes to know death by inflicting it on others. He's kind of tragic in that sense, even if not very sympathetic. There's definitely something there about his unfettered scientific curiosity, first studying and utilizing the conduit until it literally awakens angels of death, for which he is imprisoned by his people. Then, creating the Ganglion and initiating his contests to learn about death, only for him to be killed by the people he's terrorizing. The moment where he finally understands death as he's dying is both cathartic and pitiable, and it really makes him stand out to me. Al makes a really good counter for him too, being someone who has a relentless drive to persist and live on, defying Void's understanding. Moving on, as the ghosts descend on the White Whale too, Cross pulls an Al, fighting off the ghosts at the cost of their own safety to save everyone. That sense that Al has of just loving everyone so much that he'd put his life on the line is reflected in Cross. Thankfully though, they make it back safe, and it's so cute how much everyone cares about each other here. Calling back to the 2001 A Space Odyssey homage in the intro, this ending comes full circle. Not only repeating that imagery, but this jumping between worlds visual was definitely drawing on that influence, right? Al gets to see his sister again, another moment adding to the huge list of things in this game that make me emotional. Similarly, I love the note this game leaves you on. I'm so glad this cast of characters got their happy ending. So yeah, that's Chapter 13. It's amazing, it's beautiful, it's peak. I'm running out of adjectives to use. Aside from having to adjust to the faster pace of everything, I had basically no issues with it. Getting a new title screen at the end was something I should have seen coming, but was still a lovely surprise. Everyone's here, and the Ares and Horesfeld can fly by, it's so cute. I love these characters, and I love this game. I'm still far from done here though. Past this point, I'm going to spoil the other Xenoblade games and Xenosaga. I'll give you a few seconds if you want to head out here. One of the most exciting things to me here is that XDE feels like it's only scratching the surface of the wider world and story that exist. It's always Takahashi's trick, playing the long game on these things, so I'm not only really happy with XDE itself, but also the future potential of what it suggests. As is the theme of the series, the future is overflowing with hope and possibilities, and with every new game release, this series really feels like it's hitting a peak of interconnected storytelling that the artists at Monolith Soft have been striving for since Xenogears. Anyway, let's get unhinged and talk about Xenolore for a while. Since Chapter 13 first introduced the idea of parallel dimensions and universe hopping, I did start to think it likely that they would end up in another Xeno universe, possibly as the blue light passing the planet at the end of Future Redeemed. That wasn't the case, of course, since this new planet has a ring. What I didn't remember, however, until I started editing and went back to get footage of Xenosaga 3's ending, is that that game also ends with that 2001 homage, revealing a planet with a ring. What the fuck? Okay, to be clear, this doesn't necessarily mean these two planets are one and the same, and I don't really have much to add if they are, since that territory is very much unexplored as of right now. Regardless, X already being a game that draws heavily from Saga does make this very, very interesting if nothing else. And whether this turns out to be setting up some kind of crossover, or just a nice callback to Saga, I'll be happy because it'll be peak either way. Personally, I'm glad X is still able to stand as its own thing, while being very gently connected to the rest of the series, so I'm happy this ending doesn't say too much. There are a lot of other ties to the rest of the series that I have more to say about though. First and foremost, we gotta talk about the fucking conduit. So, Xeno really likes having a funny science guy who got a little too excited about the Zohar and fucked up a lot of things because of it. First Grimoire, then Klaus, and now Void. The Zohar does also have a tendency of just showing up and being the start of a domino chain that causes every event we see across the series, so it's not all that surprising that it exists in at least the history of X's world. What's interesting to me, though, is what this implies about the conduit seen in Xenoblade 2. We know after that game that it departed Klaus's world, and it doesn't reappear in Xenoblade 3, so I think it's squarely just gone from that universe, the only remnants being the remaining Trinity processor cores. Being a gateway to the upper domain, it's possible, and I think probable, that the conduit exists across all universes in the lower domain, being that it's not bound by lower domain physics and rules and stuff. This is complicated by time. It's hard to say whether the conduit adheres to a linear conception of time. Did the conduit that Void studied appear after leaving Klaus's world, or is it the other way around? I don't have any concrete ideas about this, by the way, this is mostly just speculation and rambling, so if you have anything to add, please do. There are some things I think are worth considering regarding this. For one, Luxar states that the Samarians arrived at the dawn of the cosmos from another plane. Everything we've learned in XDE strongly suggests that they used either the conduit or the Ares cores to do that. I guess this means also that the Ares cores are akin to the Zohar emulators from Saga, which is neat. This universe hopping is consistent with the effect that Klaus describes in Xenoblade. This universe hopping is consistent with the effect that Klaus describes in Xenoblade 2, of many different people and things being flung off into other dimensions, as well as the power of the Zohar in Saga and Gears. The Samarian ships also heavily resemble Abel's Ark from Saga. While obviously they're not literally Abel's Ark, that similarity begs some questions that I honestly have zero answers for. Easiest answer is that the Samarians originate from the future of Saga's universe, which isn't too much of a stretch considering they essentially just look like humans, and they modeled their ships off of Abel's Ark for whatever reason. But knowing this series, I imagine the truth is a bit more complicated than that. I guess it's also possible that those ships do function the same as Abel's Ark, and are, in some way, real number domain manifestations of some Udu-like entity's observation or interference. Hard to say, but it is at least exciting to think about the possibilities. Anyway, all this to say, if the Samarians used the conduit to jump universes, then they brought it with them from whatever world they came from. But if they used the Ares cores, it's possible the conduit disappeared from their world too to go and ruin another scientist's life. The conduit is also described as the ultimate matter, which is cool as fuck, but conveys something different than the meta-universe manifold Galea described it as. I don't think these descriptions are contradictory or anything, it just tells us a bit more about the conduit's potential power. It could also demonstrate the differences in how Void utilized the conduit compared to Grimoire or Klaus, which I think is suggested further by how only Void awakened the ghosts. As far as I understand it, ghosts can appear in any universe, and Elma describes them as a corrective system for the universe, a failsafe. In this case, they were awoken to correct Void's existence because he tampered with the conduit. I suppose it's possible that the ghosts don't exist in the universes of the other games, but the fact that they show up to destroy Elma's world, Earth, and Mirror, we know at least the latter two exist in different dimensions, would seem to hint at the opposite. I guess what I'm positing is that, by tampering with the conduit directly, Void called the ghosts to this world. Contrastingly, Klaus and Grimoire only performed experiments that use the conduit's power less directly, hence no ghosts for them. I don't know if there's anything to that or if I'm misunderstanding somewhere, but there's something to think about at least. Another thing to discuss, the Ares cores. So, they are literally made from the conduit by resolving the power of the conduit into its component elements, as the Mirren Archives puts it. Ghosts have very similar cores, but theirs are made of antimatter. Those original Ares cores, as well as the ghosts, are both purple, and when the conduit is briefly shown, it's bright light silhouettes against purple energy that it gives off. This, I think, is weird. The conduit itself is not purple, it seems, it just gives off purple energy, but it appears to be distinctly different from how we've seen the conduit before, so basically I don't know. If I had to guess, something the purple energy is a representation of Void creating the Ares cores. Again, especially for stuff I'm less confident about, I would love to hear some more elaboration from y'all in the comments. If you have any ideas, please let me know. Something I feel a bit more confident in, though, is that it's stated that something happened to cause Void to break free of his imprisonment. I feel like this was probably Klaus's experiment, some rippling aftershock of that event, since we still don't know the full scale of it. It's entirely possible that this is just something else, but this interpretation makes sense to me. Okay, I hope you're not sick of me talking about the conduit, because I have more to say about the conduit. So the Ares that Elma brought to Earth was a recreated Ares based off of ancient Samarian records, which makes it an emulator of a conduit emulator, I guess. Anyway, the Mirren Archives confirm that this Ares is what helped accelerate Earth's technological understanding to the point we see in-game, which is the same role the Zohar occupies in other universes. This is just cool because it means X's backstory is even more Xeno than it already was. It was just that this time they only had the recreation and not the original. I think this might also explain why the Lifehold units look like conduits. The technology came full circle, in a sense. On the topic of the conduit's shape, the fact that Clue worships ancient Samar might add something to the shape of Neil's earrings. The shape isn't exact though, which could be because of how historical fact can get distorted over time, which is another idea this series likes to play with. On the other hand, I might be stretching a bit too far here, I think the brain rot is getting to me. Let's talk about God for a bit. Elma's explanation of the ghosts involves mention of God, prompting Tatsu to ask if God is real. And yeah, God probably exists. The question is, what kind of God is it? Well, again, I think this is probably a very Xenosaga type situation. In Saga, Udu is an entity from the upper domain, observing the lower domain where all the events of the game take place. Very little is known about Udu or the upper domain, but due to its seeming omnipotence and incomprehensibility, people in that world view it as a god. The Zohar being connected to the upper domain is linked to Udu, and I think the ghosts being awoken due to conduit shenanigans implies something similar is present in X's universe. The ghosts are referred to as angels of death as well, which suggests even further their link to whatever upper domain godlike entity exists. Speaking of Saga stuff, the collective unconscious. So Al ends up in the rift between worlds, the backstage of space as he describes it, which also happens to be the place where the collective unconscious resides. Cool, and oh, what's that? Klaus Trilogy jump scare? Okay. So this implies to me that this space is shared across dimensions, which makes sense since it's the rift between them. But this is wild because it means these universes share a collective unconscious. Al talks about how overwhelming it is, and how hard he had to try not to get lost in there. It also means that an incomplete universe jump, initiated by either the conduit or things derived from it, leads to the rift between worlds, and may make people take on a collective unconscious / imaginary number domain existence. This is pretty much what happened with Grimoire and Nephilim in Saga, so that's neat. And I think this is probably what happened to people like Galea who were unaccounted for after Klaus's experiment, assuming she had another half to her like Klaus and didn't just entirely become Mayneth. And since we're now at the point where we know the connection between X and the other Xenoblade games, let's talk about the Ares cores some more. Now obviously these are not literal Ouroboros cores, they've existed for this design long before Xenoblade 3 was even a thing. That being said, I do think there is a very light connection here. The Ares draws its power, at least in part, from Al and his emotions. We see this in the ending when he activates the jump by talking about how much he loves everyone. Again, adorable. Emotions are also a powerful factor in Ionios, a world that seems to be very dictated by the power of emotion. Both Ouroboros and Mobius draw their power from this well, and it reads to me as though Ionios as a world exists based somewhat on cognition and perception. Its reality is manifested by the will of the people, given form in Zed and Mobius as a whole, who are then overcome by that same power, the will of the people, as well as Noah, Mio and co, given form in Ouroboros. Likewise, avatars in Ionios also draw from this, manifesting themselves as they see fit, whether consciously or subconsciously. Something der Wille zu Macht, you get it. This again is a pretty common idea across the series, the nature of power, the will to wield it and manifest what you want, so it makes sense it shows up again here. In Xenoblade 3, the collective unconscious of the souls in Origin power both Ouroboros and Mobius, so I think it's possible that the same is true for the Ares, the souls of the departed wishing for a better future for those who remain. This is accentuated by the Ouroboros at the end of Future Redeemed looking strikingly similar to the Ares. This could have something to do with Numa's core and N's sword, Malus's avatar, initiating that transformation. Their wills manifest in Ionios, and their connection to the conduit creates a form like the Ares, itself having been derived from the conduit. I think both of these lines of thought make sense, and they both make me smile, so that makes them true. Okay, a few more miscellaneous things I couldn't fit anywhere else. The bottom of Lao's Chimera form bears some resemblance to the original Ares, maybe as a result of Luxar's DNA being incorporated, as both the Ganglion and Ares were made by Void. I don't know, maybe that one's a bit of a stretch, but eh. There are two new super bosses that are both ghosts. They just kinda exist, but they feel like fun secrets, and they both have extremely biblical names, as do all of the regular ghost enemies you can fight. Ghost Cathedral feels particularly reminiscent of the Gnosis, so that's neat. Also, the ghost's weakness being their cores is the third time that cores have been a weak point in this series, so that's funny. All of the design work, by the way, is peak. I love how the Samarians look, how the ghosts look, how Void looks. His form in the final boss is kinda similar to X, Y, and Z Infinity, being a big head with an appearance taken from their more humanoid forms. Don't think that means much lore-wise, it's just cool. Since Future Connected came out, I think it's been a reasonably common theory that Telethia the Endbringer is either one of the Telethia that entered the Rift or descended from them. Mira being in a different dimension might lend even more credence to that, since the Fog Rift from Future Connected probably leads to the Rift between worlds. Maybe. One last thing. The spirits residing in the collective unconscious are represented by these golden motes of light, much like those seen in Xenoblade 3. I could very easily see this just being a visual parallel, but considering this collective unconscious is shared between universes, I think it might go a bit deeper than that. The motes in Xenoblade 3 also contain a person's essence. Miyabi and Noah both experienced this firsthand, so I think this is definitely a deliberate point of connection. Anyway, I think that might be the extent of what I have to talk about. I know as soon as I upload this, I'll remember like 5 other things, but oh well. I just want to reiterate how much I love this game. It took what was already a phenomenal experience and just amplified it by so much. It really feels like Monolith Soft are in full stride right now. After Xenoblade 3 made clear their desire to move on from what's known into something unexplored and new, I'm so happy to see that promise realized, and I for one could not be more excited about the future of this series. Thanks for watching. Again, if you have anything to add, please do. I could talk about this game and this series for hundreds of hours, and I really want to hear other people's takes about all of this. Also, tell me which character you want to kiss the most and why it's Neil now. Okay, goodbye.